Canada's tense relations with China will be back in the spotlight on Parliament Hill tomorrow when a special committee on issues sits for the first time since mid-June. A lot has happened on the file since then.
Have arrived with the full support of the opposition at the best person to lead this inquiry.
The Trudeau government has appointed a top Quebec judge to head a public inquiry that will specifically examine allegations of election meddling by the Chinese government. There are also growing concerns about Beijing's intentions towards Taiwan following a wave of military activity in the waters off the island. The Common Special Committee has tabled separate reports in recent days touching on both of those areas of concerns, and it is meeting tomorrow behind closed doors. And its 12 members, including Ontario MP Michael Chong, who Global Affairs confirms was targeted by a disinformation campaign on a Chinese social media platform. Well, for a closer look at this, we are joined now by the chair of the committee, Liberal MP Ken Hardy in Ottawa. Thank you, sir, for joining us this morning. As we just mentioned, your committee has tabled reports that include a number of recommendations for the government. Can you briefly share with us sort of the main recommendations?
Well, with respect to Taiwan, we would like to see closer ties with Taiwan. We would like to see parliamentarians and cabinet ministers or parliamentary secretaries visit Taiwan, because Taiwan is literally in the front lines. It was in the front lines against COVID. It's in the front lines against the rather bellicose attitude of the Chinese mainland. And economically, of course, we have a fair bit of trade with Taiwan, but we could do a lot more.
What has sort of the government's response been to these recommendations so far?
Well, the recommendations in the Taiwan report were intended, I think, by the committee members. And by the way, this was unanimous amongst all of the parties represented on the committee. We wanted to push the boundaries a little bit. I think the key recommendation that the government took note of was that nothing about the future of Taiwan should be decided unless it involves the Taiwanese people. Now, Canada for a long time has maintained what's called the One China policy. We do not recognize the independence of Taiwan, and we recognize Beijing as the sole seat of government for all of China, including Taiwan. But we note that Taiwan sees things differently, and the official Canadian government position on this is that we will not support unilateral action by anybody to change the current status quo, and that is maintained.
Sir, there's been a lot of discussion over the last few months about interference when it comes to China in particular. Overall, how well do you think the government has handled the allegations of interference by the Chinese government in its federal elections? Well,
there's not been a tremendous amount of real hard evidence about interference in the election. In my own riding of Fleetwood Port Kells, there was certainly the feeling by the Conservative candidate that something was working against him, and certainly China was in the spotlight because of that. But more over and above the election, I think it's the coercion, it's the intimidation. You say something bad on WeChat about the Chinese government, and the next thing you know, you're getting something in the mail with pictures of your family out in the community. I mean, this is the sort of thing that just doesn't go, and very difficult to deal with. But the Canadian government, in part through some of the recommendations that we're making in our report on security, will be making moves to do things like setting up the Foreign Agents Registry, which is critical to addressing the issue.
I wonder about the timing of this and if there's sort of things are moving fast enough. You said it is difficult to deal with, but Ottawa has been accused of dragging its feet on claims of Chinese interference. But it seems to be sort of taking a more proactive approach in regard to its allegations against the India government concerning the killing of a Sikh separatist on Canadian soil. What do you make of that?
Well, I think there are two different dynamics. China has, as a civilization, has been around for thousands of years. And they have a very slow and methodical approach to achieving their ends. So, for instance, the setting up of Confucius Institutes, which is an arm of the United Front, one of the Chinese government's key ways of inveigling its way into other countries. We have been speaking with universities and other educational institutes to cut ties with that because they're really set up to control and mobilize the Chinese students in Canada. And this is just one of a number of things. The Chinese police stations, which we were all about a number of months ago. This is where setting up the foreign agents registry would give us a bit more teeth. Now, that's something that's being worked on. But again, these things shouldn't be rushed into. Canadian governments in the past have tried to do things quickly only to see them fall apart because they weren't well enough constructed. So yes, we need to do something, but we need to do it the right way. And this is what we're on about right now.
I appreciate the sort of measured approach there, but I'm sure for many Chinese Canadians watching, the speed would be more appreciated as well, or also equally appreciated, particularly if they're experiencing some of these things. I'm wondering just specifically about one last comment before we let you go, which is coming from NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, who wants other countries, including India, to be included into the public inquiry into foreign interference particularly. Do you believe they should be?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Certainly in the investigation that has already taken place or has been underway with respect to possible interference in the election in our riding in British Columbia. India has been brought up by officials. We have a very, very large South Asian diaspora in Surrey and especially in our riding. And right now, really, with everything that's gone on, the main appeal is for calm. But absolutely, we must include India. Cuba has been involved, Iran to a fairly well. So this isn't just an issue with the government of China. There are malevolent forces right across the globe that are probing and testing a lot of countries, in the Western democracies, and the degree to which we can have a unified approach to this, in league with Great Britain, the United States, the Five Eyes partners, and others, the more effective we're going to be.
We really appreciate your time today, sir. That was Liberal MP Ken Hardy, chair of the House of Commons Special Committee for Canada-China Relations.